Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they move through their pain, they realize that something worthwhile, something for the greater good could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hi, everybody. How you doing today? Tom alone here today. I just wanted to pop in every once in a while and kind of fill you in and update you with what's going on. But I also put a post out this week about asking a couple questions, and so I'm going to answer a couple of those too. And first, I just want to again say thank you to everybody who supports the podcast, listens to the podcast, watches it now that I'm having it up on YouTube. For those of you who don't know, initially we were getting I was getting, say we like we're a big organization or something. It's just me, but I'd get the audio out on YouTube, but it wasn't an actual video of the podcast. I got the first couple out and that type of thing. But recently, the last 6 or 7 I've done in video, and we will be getting them all redone in video. The old ones and all the current ones will be done on video. So you'll see those just so you know what's happening. If you haven't seen the posts and things like that. Some people just listen, some people watch from different areas. You might not be part of the Facebook groups and all of those different things. So just wanted to update you on all of that stuff. And of course, it's the holiday season here in America. And a lot of countries, it's the holiday season right now. So it becomes a sensitive time in grief a lot of times for people. And I will say personally, for me this year, this is the second year since Jeff crossed over. And this year is harder. There's some other things happening too, but this year's harder. And a lot of people did say that the second year seems to be harder for some reason. And I'd say some reason, but I think some of the reasons is because in the first year, you're in such shock and you're dealing with, all those anniversaries come up, and then there's kind of like, you're in that shock stage, I think, really. And so as each anniversary comes up and you cross it, it's monumental and it's occupying all your mind and time and all your resources. And then the second year, you realize that this is your life now, and settling in all of that is difficult. So I think that's why there's different dynamics. Could be different reasons for different people, but I've always loved the Christmas season time. I still do. It's been hard this year, though. It's been hard I usually listen to Christmas music a lot. I used to perform it. It was my busiest month performing, doing Christmas music. And so it's always very special. Even after my mom passed, I still was loved Christmas time. And, even though she was here for every Christmas with us and those type of things. But this year is just, I don't know, it's just a little harder and harder to listen to songs. I haven't really engaged in it. There's times when I dabble and I kind of, I'm looking at the Christmas lights and I enjoy them and I love them. And I love the Christmas time. We have a couple malls, believe it or not, that are still open in this area. And I like walking around when Christmas is happening and absorbing it. And as much as I don't like shopping, I do like walking around the mall and enjoying that stuff. So, but, and it's weird and grief is weird like this, where I can have those times where it's like, oh, I just love that. And then there's the pain side, and then that kind of comes in a little bit. And so, it's really strange, but we are wonderfully made as human beings, and we are able to do all these things at once. And so grief's a part of that now, and it is part of your life probably too. So it's going to be there. It's just how we process it and deal with it through all times. But let me quickly, I got some other things to fill you in on, but let me get to the questions that came up. A couple of people did post questions this week, and one of them, the first one was, and I'll just read them. I'm going to do them anonymously. I don't like to put the names out there. I didn't ask about that initially, so I don't want to do that for anybody. But the question said, wintertime is hard enough with seasonal affective disorder, but when your child's date of death occurs during this time, how do you make it through? It'll be 35 years in January and it still hurts. And that's true. That's true. Excuse me. All the people out there that talk about, oh, you need to be over this or whatever. It's not that way. And so this is part of just a passion of mine to educate people better about all of this. It's so frustrating to run into it when this can be helped. We can help people understand this better and know that this is the reality, that it still hurts. After 35 years, it still hurts. And, as it does after 22 months, it still hurts. And so, it's the same thing in a sense in the experience in those two, differences of time. Mine's 22 months. This person's is 35 years. The pain is there. It's reality. And especially around the Christmas and seasonal time, here in Western New York, where I live, the seasons change and you go from summer and it comes into the winter season. And around our Buffalo area here, we have lake effect snowstorms and we do get, harsh winters sometimes. And so we fight that seasonal disorder sometimes where it goes into the wintertime and you're like, oh, here comes the gray, here comes no trees or no leaves on the trees. And we're going through the next 4 or 5 months, bam. And so you're fighting that and dealing with that. And then also to think about running into the holiday season, which is, even without a grief situation, it can be a sensitive time, and I think it's a special time for anybody. It doesn't matter your religious beliefs or anything like that. It's a time where families get together and we are meant to be in community as human beings. And so it's a special time for that alone. You don't even have to get into the religious aspects and those type of things. It's just that our sense of community is there. And that is broken, of course, when you've lost a child, lost a loved one. And you have to deal with that as it comes. And so I think there's many things that we can do during that time. Personally, I can share, and that's always my expertise is what I've gone through and what I've done. That's my expertise, plus some training in the grief situation. So I do have that too. But personally, in an experience like last year, the first year of Christmas after Jeff had crossed over, Jeff lived with us here for the last 2 years of his life, 2.5 years. So we had Christmas here with Jeff, and we do a family photo, which Jeff was included in the last two, and we have those pictures. and the joyful experiences of having Jeff here. And then last year we did not. And so we functioned the same last year. We did everything the same. And was Jeff acknowledged at times? Yes. We didn't do anything special. We didn't do the empty chair, which some people do. It's whatever you choose to do to honor your loved one. And I think that's what I'm getting to in general here, is that we want to find a way to bring them back and have them with us at Christmas. And so that's what I would suggest most of all to do, is embrace them with you in this season. And they are there with you. And so, and again, belief system wise, I tend to believe that Jeff exists still and he's there. So that's my belief. Even if you have no belief like that, this person has been an element of your life. And so they are part of you and exist in that way in you, no matter what. So you can't escape that. And so why not embrace that and allow them to be present with you in that way, in whatever way is coming through you, in what that person is for you and is meant for you. So let that flesh itself out in whatever way you see fit. That could be, I don't know. There's all different kinds of things you may do with that, whatever your forte is in that. It could be personal. You could keep it inside of you. And that's how you absorb that and work with that. But that would be my biggest suggestion, is to have them still there with you. And so the loss is not as poignant. Of course, they're not physically there with you, but they are part of you. And so embrace that part of you and allow them to be there. And, this is nothing, this is just what's coming to mind for me. You ask a question. It's like if I answer my questions like we're talking face to face. And sometimes it's off the cuff. Sometimes I think of things later on that, I should have said that, or I will. And maybe I'll post it if something comes up like that. But right now, that's what comes to my mind. That's how I would suggest to somebody to say, what do you do with this? What do you do with this? The seasonal disorder things and things like that you're dealing with, you have to find ways of coping with those type of things too. They're specific. They're different. It's not the same thing. Grief is separate from that. So you have to, just like if you had two grieving situations at the same time, you need to grieve each one specifically. Just like if you have a condition, say you're depressed, or say you're, something like that, you need to deal with that condition. Then you need to deal with grief too. So it's not all wrapped up into one. There's specific things and you need to deal with them specifically in the way that they can be dealt with. So that's what I would suggest in something like that. Of course it hurts. I'm so sorry for your loss. I say loss, I don't like that word really. I don't think it's a loss. I've lost Jeff physically, but he's here. He's present. He's shown himself to me. And I know that. So I'm trying to break myself even of those things that we've been conditioned with. And loss is one of those. That's a bad word. I don't like that word. I don't think they're lost. For one thing, they are never lost. They are never lost. And even that person who may not believe in these afterlife things that we talk about, or spiritual things, they're not lost within you. That's for sure. This is still hurting 35 years later. So they're not lost. They're there. And that I would take that and run with it and embrace it. Anything else comes up for that with me. And I will tell you too, that I seek my guidance. I believe in the spirit world, spirit guides and things, and tapping into that world. And so I seek that, and I seek guidance in everything that I'm doing through that. So when these answers come, when things happen for me personally, opportunities, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, I don't take credit for that. I believe that this is a path that I've been put on now, and I'm supposed to be following this. So that's why these things come. That's why things come to my mind, everything else. That's the way I look at that. So I hope that you can find that and embrace that and have a different holiday season this year. The person who asked that question, I hope that you have that a breakthrough comes for you, and that your loved one is present with you in the way that happens for you, and that happens this year, and that you can celebrate that. That would be my greatest hope for you. And does the grief go away? No, it's not going to go away. It changes, as you know already, probably after 35 years, it changes. And so it changes. Can it rear its ugly head in a harsh way? Of course it can. And that'll happen for your lifetime. And so, but that's how we deal with that is how we deal with that. I guess is the best way to put it. But that's what matters. So for that question, the second question that came up was how can men be more open with their grief? And I got a lot to say about something like that, I guess, or maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I'm a man, obviously, and personally, for me, and you've heard this probably on the podcast already. Can I put a little caveat in there about hearing things again and again on the podcast? I do say things again and again, and I repeat stories, and you're going to hear those over and over again. For those of you that listen to all the podcasts, first of all, thank you. I'm always blown away when I release the podcast, and there's obviously subscribers to the podcast outlets, and all of a sudden the numbers fly up, and I'm like, wow, people are actually listening. That's amazing, and thank you for that, because this is a labor that was put upon me again by my guidance in the spirit world, and to say, do this podcast. And I have no expectations for it. It's just something I'm supposed to be doing. And so when I see that type of thing, it just blows me away. It's humbling. It's rewarding. It's encouraging. And so I thank you for that. But I knew personally, that I needed help right away. I have some background in grief work. I was a pastor for 15 years. I led grief groups, the Grief Share program in the churches. I did that. I was a hospice spiritual care director for 3.5 years. And so I've done funeral services. I've been at bedsides. I have been with dying people. I've held people dying. I've held their hands as they're dying. And so I've been through some of this stuff in my life. And when it is, the horror of losing your son is entirely different. None of that is in your head at that time. And I was out of control. Not crazy, whatever, but I'm just sitting there saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was yelling it. And I just started saying, I need help. I need help. I need help. And I did. And even the days after, same thing, I need help. And so I started seeking it out myself. I'm a good online person. I like resources online. And so I started looking at websites. I started looking at, groups, at podcasts, YouTube, whatever I could find. And that's where I found my help, actually, through and you've heard this mentioned a gazillion times on the podcast, but I have no stake in David Kessler's group or anything, but they helped me. So I tell you about it. And it was called Tender Hearts. It was an online group. They meet 4 times a week in different capacities online on Zoom. And I was there religiously once I got in that group 4 days a week. And it was my life source. That's peer-to-peer. It's not counseling. It's not therapy. It's people who have experienced grief. And again, I'm going to take an offshoot right here. I have been approached by many people locally here now. They start coming to me or they message me online. And some of these people are talking about folks that they're trying to find help for who are not open or are not, they're alone in their grief. Let's put it that way. They're alone. You can't do it alone. You can't. We're meant to be in community, just like I said, the holiday season where we pull ourselves together. And that's why it's so special, because that community aspect, family aspect, that's why you cannot do it alone. And you're not meant to do it alone. We're meant to be people who are together, who communicate, who, are with each other. And so it's the same in grief. You need to have help, people come alongside you, people who know grief, who are not going to judge you, who are not going to, all these things, grief friends, really. And you need that. So, and let me tell you too, that if resources are given to you or things suggested to you, if one's not working for you, then find another. Don't stop. Too many times we say, or we'll encounter something and we'll say, oh, well, that didn't work for me. And that's it. And you can't do that. You can't do it. That's not going to work. That's not the way it's meant to be. And not everything's going to be right. Not everything is going to work for you. So seek something else out. I have oodles of resources, and they're growing all the time for me. So please reach out. And I don't care. You can do it anonymously. You can do whatever. Just do it. And it pains me to hear about people like that. And I heard about some people who just, it's been months since a grief situation, and they come home and they just sit there and look at each other. And oh my gosh, it hurts to hear that, because I know what's available in being able to help them through. So reach out. And that's, again, I'm on the men's with grief situation. I'm talking about what's occurred with me, but these little offshoots that I've encountered recently, men are going to be reluctant to it. The society thing, as much as a lot of things are changing and men are being open and, more in touch with things, the reality is most men are still men. And that the old kind of concept, and I'm part of Helping Fathers Heal, which is a men's group, based off of, or an offshoot of Helping Parents Heal, that group that I'm part of. And it's an international group. And Helping Fathers Heal, we meet every Wednesday night on Zoom, and Eastern time, it's 8:00. And now we're up to 40, 50 guys in there every single Wednesday. And we're even doing offshoot groups during, little pop-up times of Zoom during the week, because so many men are sharing on there. And that's the encouraging side of this, is that as hard as men are to break and get to do something like that, when it happens, we all of us in the group are blown away and so thankful that we have a safe place to share as men. And there's other men's groups out there. This is not the only one, but this is the one I'm part of. And I know what it's meant. And many times we have said, we can't wait for Wednesday, to talk to other guys, to share, to throw F-bombs out there when we're frustrated, when we're hurt, when we're mad, to cry with each other, to laugh with each other, and be men, be men. We can still be men and grieve, and it's all right. So, when you say, how can men be more open with their grief? It's ultimately up to the man, just like it is with any woman too. It's up to you to deal with your grief. Nobody can do it for you. And so the man can be led to those places, I guess. And some may be stubborn for their lifetimes. And unfortunately, they will not be able to experience some of the help and peace that you can find in this. Grief is not anything that we're trying to fix. Grief is the people aren't sick. The people don't need to be fixed. The people need to be led and helped to process the grief the best way, to move on with more love than pain. And that's all there is to that. So, and men are stubborn. Men are fixers. They have unique things that a death does to them. And me personally, like, I think of things that I doubt. Should I have done more in one situation? Should I have done something else here? Should I have been more engaged? Those things happen for me. And men are, as it's said many times, fixers. We can't fix this. We can't do it. And so that's frustrating to guys. That's hurtful to guys. It hits the core of us. If you go back to humanity, the hunter-gatherers, the suppliers, the providers, and we're not providing. We didn't protect. We didn't, we didn't fix. And so men are uniquely going through all of that and processing that in a different way than women process their grief and those things too. So it is unique. And how can men be more open? It's up to the man, I guess. And what I would suggest, and this is, I just had a call with a friend that a friend's sister who lost her daughter, and she has children young children who are processing the loss of their mom. And so what I suggested to them was that, find someone they respect. At that young age, kids, they're going to be resistant to help, and they're not going to open up and be, okay, I'm going to join this group, I'm going to do all these things. It's not going to happen. So someone they respect, something they're involved in, maybe, the same thing with guys, I would say, is that, who's around them, what kind of friend. And you got to find the right person, because we have friends who will say, how you doing? And then you start really telling them, and they're like, whoa. They weren't ready for that. And I did post this recently. If you're going to ask a grieving person how they're doing, please be ready to listen with love and compassion, because it is so, it's actually harmful to a grieving person to get that from somebody, where it's like, oh, how you doing? And then if you really tell them, it depends on the setting, of course. I mean, if I'm out in a bar and somebody says, how you doing? I kind of gauge on who I'm talking to. And I say, well, I'm doing all right, doing the best I can, and that kind of thing, or just passive. Or it might be a person that I know better, and I may say, it's been a bit rough lately, and then they may say, well, what's going on, and really asking. And so that's what I would suggest to anybody who's really inquiring with somebody who's grieving, is to be genuine in it and say that. So guys need that especially. And, but find maybe someone who they respect around them. And if you're a mate or somebody like that, you may not be the person to be able to assist them with that, because there's unique dynamics going on with that cause that possibly not to happen. So I would suggest, and then have maybe have a talk with a person who they may respect, and suggest some things to them, or provide them with resources that they might be able to get across to the man. That type of thing is probably a better approach than just trying to drill it to them, because they're not going to probably receive that very well. I heard circumstances of, people just leaving things around, like, oh, this. And, I think of this whole thing too, of us being stubborn in our grief. Excuse me, stubborn in general, I think. And when I was talking to this woman just on the phone now, we talked about stubbornness. And stubbornness is a big issue, because what happens is that, and it's happened with me with things initially. Excuse me, a little frog. I'd be looking at things, and because I was so clouded in my grief and so devastated by it, that, I'd be looking at things, and I'd say, I'd hear something, and I'd say, yeah, that's great for you, that type of thing, and just not whatever. But I can tell you, as you do that again and again and again, and all of a sudden it starts penetrating you, and it starts cracking through. And now when I look back and I look at some of those things that I reacted to that way, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did they help me? Like, it really meant a lot to me, even though I was in such a fog at the time, that when I was absorbing something like that and kind of sitting there like, oh yeah, this is great. Here we go. Another one. Here's another one of these stories. Here's another. And that's all normal. That's all. Don't worry if that's happening for you, but keep pressing on. And this is something that I am very high on and hard on. If something's not working or doesn't seem to be working for you, look at something else. Keep going. Don't stop, because that's what we do. We're stubborn. We're like, oh, well, see, that didn't work, so I'm not going to do it again. And I've been guilty of that in the past. And people all over that we know are guilty of that all the time. Don't do that. Don't do that. There's something out there for you. That's part of the reason I do this podcast. Because when I started seeing all the things that people were doing with their grief, I said, wow, I never thought of something like that. And that person who is more inclined toward that is going to gravitate to that. And that's going to be special for them and going to be able to help them. So that's why I try to get all these different areas of study out there, of resources out there. We've done one on pets, we've done holistic eating, we've done, all different types of things that mean something to people and can meet them where they are in their grief. And that's what I'm trying to do. I say we all the time. I want to stop that. It's just me on this podcast. But, and on this podcast and every time that we do it, I'm the only one doing it. So, so yeah, just keep going. Please keep going. There's something for you. And if you need resource suggestions, please email me, send me a message. I have tons and I love providing them for people. And one of the greatest satisfactions I think I could get is that, oh, Tom, you sent me that and it's helped me or it's helped my husband or it's helped whoever in this way. And, so yeah, I hope I did answer with the men's thing. I mean, that's a big part of it is as men are going to react differently and relate differently on how they're going to accept help with grief and open up about it. They may not be what, men and women are different and men may not open up the same way to you personally as their mate, as a woman, as they will with somebody else. Like, for instance, me and the guys. We talk differently. We're more comfortable with each other. We talk openly. It's no affront to you as our mate. It is none. It's just that's the way it's working for us right now. Perhaps down the line, you and your mate will reach a point to where you'll be able to share in that way. And it's okay for it to be a little different as you're working through. So, all of that. I'm going to wind it down here pretty quick, but I got a great thing to tell you coming up on the podcast. And so I will tell you a neat story, and you'll hear this in the podcast that I'm going to tell you about too, because I tell the testimony of it. But so my last podcast that I did with somebody else was with Roseanne Norris, and she is with Helping Parents Heal. She's a affiliate leader in Binghamton, New York, and I met her at that Helping Parents Heal conference. So as she was talking to me and we had our conversation, she had told me that she had been at a Sandra Champlain conference while she was working through her things. So when we got all done with the podcast and everything, I sent Rosanna an email and I said, because I'll retrace here. Back when I was in my early grief stages, when I was seeking out resources and things, one of the things that I listened to and that I really gravitated toward was We Don't Die Radio, which is Sandra Champlain's podcast. And she also is associated with Coast to Coast AM. Some of you have heard that. I used to listen to Coast AM after music shows that I was doing late at night and driving home because it's on in the wee hours of the morning. And it is about the paranormal and things like that. And I was always intrigued by that kind of stuff. So George Norrie does it now. And it used to be Art Bell way back when. And it's always intriguing and great to hear some of the stuff on there. So I always loved that. But Sandra does, they took on part of her or brought her on with what's called Shades of the Afterlife. And so she does things, or they take excerpts of her podcast and broadcast it on Shades of the Afterlife too. So anyways, that Sandra has just an inviting voice. She's very up tempo, upbeat, very positive. It felt good to listen to her, and the subject matter, of course, is always relatable for me. So I gravitated toward her, and it helped me. I was sent a link from a dear friend of mine Chris Gress, she sent me a link to a meditative person, Jason Stevenson, early on. And, I used his sleep meditations and it calmed me and it gave me peace. And I sent Jason a message and just said, Jason, I want to thank you. It was down the line 6 months later or whatever. And I said, Jason, I'm just so appreciative to you and being, and what you do. And I want you to know that it helped me. This was my situation. And I told him about Jeff passing and all of this. And he sent me back such a beautiful message. And oh man, it's just so nice to be able to encourage people in what they're doing when it helps you like that. So that's exactly what I wanted to do with Sandra. I sent Roseanne a message, the woman I had on my podcast from Binghamton. I sent her a message after the podcast, emailed her, and I said, would you know the best route to get a message to Sandra Champlain? Because she has social media outlets out there and everything, and I don't know what she really follows, if she follows all of them, if she's the one actually responding on there. So that's all I was looking for, was the best avenue to do that. And so Roseanne, it was a little bit, maybe a day later, not even a day, maybe. And Roseanne sends me an email back and she goes, I sent Rose, or I had a conversation or a message with Sandra, and she wants to have you on her podcast and she wants to be on yours. And I was like, whoa, like blown away, like how cool is that? Because I look at it kind of, what I perceive Sandra's story or her situation was, it's more national. It's up there, because of Coast to Coast and everything. So, and she's got 600 some podcasts under her belt, so, and it's had some great people on there. And so again, when I talk about being led from the spirit world in all of this, I look at this as another step in that. And I understood that doing the podcast, and I tend to shoot for the stars and some things. So I'm not afraid to approach people about being on the podcast or things like that. But that was not my intent in the message to Sandra. I was going to send her a message where I just thanked her for what she has meant to me. And so, well, back to the reality of all this, Sandra and I connected very quickly. And yesterday, I recorded the We Don't Die radio podcast with her that will be on within a couple weeks here. And on Monday, I'm going to have Sandra on Heroes in Grief. So I'll be recording that on Monday, and that'll be released next Sunday. So we're getting that in before the holidays. We both thought it was important to get our time in together before Christmas hits. So that is so exciting and so cool. I just love the time we had together already was, oh my gosh, it's just, when you're just connected with someone and it's so easy and all of that. And that was instantaneous. It was almost in our first email message, it was almost already evident. And so it's just so cool when that happens. And she has a wealth of information and resources available, which I'm so excited to bring to all of you. And that's the greatest part of it, that, and any success that the podcast may have or anything is fulfilling the mission. And that's so encouraging and it's so exciting, because that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that's fulfillment. And that's exciting. So that's the way I look at that. I don't take any, I really fight this pride thing now in my life. And that's part of why I'm not doing music again the way that I was. And so, just I'm a different person now. I'm different in who and what I'm being and what I'm meant to be. And so that's okay. It's okay. It's all right. I know you music folks out there, and maybe I've got some things coming. I don't know. I get stirred a little bit. I will tell you honestly. I did agree, and this is the first time I think I'm saying this publicly on the air for sure, is that I agreed to again sing with a local band here that I had started practicing with just before Jeff crossed over. And that was a Deep Purple and Rainbow tribute band with very good friends of mine, and it's called Deeper Than Purple. And so I have agreed to go back and sing with them, and I have rehearsed with them once so far. So a concert situation is better for me, and much something I desire to do more now than other things, because when you're in a bar and you're playing solo or you're playing with a band, you're to some degree you're generating what's happening there, and that's expected to do that. So it's a different type of thing when you are in a concert type band. People are coming to see what you're doing, and so you just can perform. And so that's why it's so freeing to do a concert type situation. That's the way it was in the Pink Floyd band I was in, the Floyd Concept. And that's the way it is with the Deep Purple and Rainbow tribute. So I've agreed to do that. And today I was driving around and I was listening to some of the old songs that I love. And now with AI, it's amazing what you can do. And you can make a backing track of any song you want. And I could never do that before with some of the old songs that there's no way you're going to find a backing track to, or like a karaoke track like people would think. And so I've thought of maybe my friend does what he calls the ego project at home, but he plays all the instruments and does your songs, and it's amazing. But I thought, well, maybe I'll bring some of these old songs out and sing them and record them at home and do that type of thing for some of the old songs that I love. So we'll see if that happens. I get these little spurs every once in a while where it's just like, oh, that'd be cool to do. And then I get tired. Pretty much is what it comes down to, work and getting tired, whatever. So who knows? We'll see what happens. But yeah, the Shades of the Afterlife thing and We Don't Die Radio, amazing. And I'm sure Sandra's already opened up her interview base to me and said, if there's anybody that you want to get in touch with, you want to have on your show, let me know. And that, what it's doing is, Heroes in Grief is it's allowing us to move to a different level now, which is awesome. So, like I said, it blows me away in one way, but in another way, it's like, it doesn't surprise me, because when you're meant to be doing what you're doing, then the successes will come because of that. So when you're on the path that you're supposed to be on, then you can expect to be successful. And when you're led in things and you are, and you follow them, and I do that by seeking out my spirit guides, direction, Jeff directly. Jeff, bring the spirit guides to me. I don't know them specifically. I haven't been introduced to them, but everybody has spirit guides as far as I'm concerned, and what I believe. And so they direct us on our purpose here in this life. And this happens to be part of mine right now. So that's, in a way, it's like, well, okay, yeah, this is what happens. So it's very cool. It doesn't, it's exciting and cool. That's all I can say. Anyways, so I think that's about it for today. I wanted to make sure I got something in this week because I didn't do anything last week. Sometimes it doesn't work out, where my guests may fall through for some reason, or we don't meet schedule wise. I had to cancel one this week because I was on a charter at the airport and things got messed up at the airport, and it took 4 hours where it sort of took an hour and a half, so those kind of things happen sometimes. And so I just don't have time to reschedule another one and get it in and that type of thing. So sometimes I may miss a week here and there, but the podcast is still going to be coming out every single week. And that's my intent. And it has been pretty consistent since I started. So thank you for being patient with all of that too. Please email me about any of the things that I've talked about, or suggestions about the podcast, things you want to discuss. There's a Facebook group called Friends of the Heroes in Grief podcast that you can be part of. And it's really meant to be a discussion group. It tends to be just my promotion of what's happening in the podcast, but there's almost 1,000 people in there. And you can discuss things that go on in the podcast. And I'd love to see some discussion amongst the folks in there about things you may hear or anything about the grief situation. There's links on the Linktree page. What the heroesingrief.com link takes you to is my Linktree page. And so that has links to everything in there. And it has the Facebook group. There's another group that I started right after, before I did the podcast or anything. It was called Western New York Network for Grief and the Grieving. And it's not meant just for Western New York people. It ended up being all over. It's international. And there's about 1,300 people in that group. And that's a safe place to share your grief things too. So there's links to all of this stuff on the Linktree page. So go there. There's also a shop tab on there. And, if you've heard resources on the podcast, they're also always in the show notes. I have links to those resources, like the people who write books or other things, or links we may talk about, excuse me, websites and that type of thing. They're all on there, but there's a shop on the Linktree page too. You click on the shop tab and it takes you to sections where I have some suggested resources in there. And then there's also ones from all the podcasts in there. The YouTube link is there. So just go to heroesofgrief.com. It takes you to all of that and you can explore that on your own. The support link is there. Thank you for those who have already supported the podcast. And, there's ongoing costs with producing a podcast and having it out there. So any help there is always appreciated. And you can even do it. You can do a one-time gift or you can do it monthly. It's a buy me a coffee link or whatever. It's just a unique way of putting it out there where, you can buy several coffees or you can buy a coffee or you can support monthly or that type of thing too. So it's all available there. And I think that's about it. Let's see. Yeah. So look forward to next week. All right. That's going to be so awesome to have Sandra Champlain on. And I'm really looking forward to getting that one out there and just to talking to Sandra again. She's a great friend already. And, we connect on so many things that it's just easy. So, I hope you all tune in and listen and share in that time too. So I guess until then, we'll see you and feel free to reach out if you need to in the meantime. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend and week. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.